Let me ever be a channel of blessings, today, now, to those that I contact in every way. These words, which were once given by the famous psychic Edgar Cayce, are a lofty and inspirational ideal. They are words that any of us might hold in mind as a purpose in life, to be a channel through which good may flow to other people. But it's a challenging ideal. How many of us are ready to say this affirmation to ourselves and sincerely mean it? Who of us is truly prepared to be this kind of a channel in today's world? Perhaps it's surprising to hear the word channel used in this way. The popular phenomenon called channeling doesn't always seem to have quite the same meaning and purpose as Edgar Cayce proposed. What exactly is channeling, and how does it relate to the ideal of serving others? In recent years, channeling has become the hottest topic in New Age circles. Almost every bookstore selling materials about esoteric teachings has dozens of volumes of channeled information. Most seminars and conferences on metaphysical subjects at least mention the topic. People from all walks of life want to know more about this new method for receiving knowledge. A channeler claims to be an open, receptive instrument through which a higher intelligence can flow. Most channelers appear to go into a light, or even a deep trance state. Insights, creativity, and theories come through the channeler, answering almost every conceivable question. This information that comes through usually is expressed by automatic writing, or as a voice. Most often, the style of writing or the sound of the voice is distinctly different than what is normal for that person. But what is the source of this material? Where does it come from? That, of course, is the biggest question, and one that may not be easy to answer. Most channeled information claims to come from spiritual beings who do not live in the physical world. They may be souls who once lived here on Earth, but having died, now exist in higher realms of consciousness. Or they may identify themselves as spiritual beings who have never been in human form. It is quite natural to ask, can we believe these claims? It's tempting to accept anything that claims to originate from the spiritual realm, and channeling seems to be such a new phenomenon, the cutting edge of spiritual studies, that it's easy to get on the bandwagon and look for a favorite channeler, maybe even try to start channeling some higher being for yourself. But is it actually new? Or is channeling simply another word for something that has been around for a long, long time? Isn't channeling really mediumship, now disguised with a new label? Mediumship has been around for centuries. Some of the most convincing evidence for life after death comes from factual material obtained through mediumistic channels. But there are also many warnings offered by those who have studied mediums. For example, not every soul that speaks through a medium is necessarily wise nor filled with the best of intentions. There are many stories of gullible people who innocently believed everything they heard through a favorite medium. And so, how do modern-day channelers respond to these words of caution? Many of them try to draw a sharp distinction between old-fashioned mediums and what happens in channeling. Many claim that mediums take the initiative and make the effort to contact the dead. In contrast, channelers are merely responding to the initiative of higher spiritual beings. Perhaps there is a difference, but the distinction is subtle, and we are still left to wonder, from where is the information coming, and how reliable is it? Some people point to Edgar Cayce as proof that channeled information can be depended upon. But was Edgar Cayce a channel in the modern sense of the word? His own psychic readings said no. In virtually all of these readings, it was Cayce's own higher self that was the basis of the information, not some other spiritual being. There were rare instances in which a non-physical being spoke through Cayce spontaneously in a reading and offered to become the permanent source of the readings. These overtures were rejected because the conscious man Edgar Cayce believed strongly that his own higher self should be the origin of the material. In those readings which he gave for more than 40 years, he was asked dozens of times about channeling information from outside sources. Many different people posed questions about subjects such as automatic writing and contact with spirit guides. Cayce's answers were consistent. He never doubted the possibility that such communications could be authentic. Sometimes the information could be very useful and was worth applying if it had strong possibilities of bearing good fruits. But his readings usually offered a warning, which essentially said this: it's easy to go astray and be misled when a mediumistic approach is used. Not everything that comes from non-physical realms is necessarily tuned in to the highest spiritual truth. And why even bother with such a method when a better one is possible? To go within yourself to the source of all knowledge. Channel your own higher self instead of channeling other beings. Surely your own higher self is every bit as insightful and wise as souls living in other spheres. For example, one man asked Edgar Cayce in his reading for advice about the information he was channeling through automatic writing. The man would periodically sit with a piece of paper on the table and a pen in hand. He would then get himself into a relaxed, receptive state until he began to feel an outside power take over control of his arm and hand. Messages would be written on the paper as he channeled information from a non-physical being. Cayce's reading offered these words, quote, "For this body, we would not give automatic writing as the channel, rather the intuitional or the meditation than the writing, knowing what is being written if it's chosen to be inscribed in ink," unquote. What did Cayce mean by this? He was suggesting an alternative technique which would allow the man to channel his own higher self. It involved tuning his conscious mind to the wiser mind of his higher self, and then, in this intuitive or inspired way, consciously deciding what to write on the paper. What could come through the man in this fashion was potentially every bit as truthful and as helpful as what came from the previous method. In fact, one of the most important promises made in all of Cayce's readings is that each one of us can tap the resources of the higher self. Every person can be a channel for this level of awareness. The process begins by understanding just what is the higher self. Then it involves following some direct and safe methods. Let's start by thinking about the nature of your own higher self. Exactly what is it? Do you imagine it to be your own authentic being which is slumbering within you? Your own true nature that needs to be awakened? This is an appealing picture, but actually it misses the point. It is really you, in your normal daily consciousness, that needs to wake up. It is your normal awareness that is dulled and often fails to see things clearly. Your higher self is already awake and active. It is constantly taking the initiative, trying to stimulate the conscious you to greater understanding and spiritual awareness. So, the first step in defining the higher self is to clarify just which side of yourself it is that needs to be roused from slumbering. Second, let's consider what is the opposite of the higher self. Is it the lower self? A bad, despicable self? Some teachings have suggested so, but that was never the approach taken in the Cayce readings. Instead, we find the words personality self, the familiar identity that we usually feel. Your personality self is made up of many qualities and traits. Some are nice, and some not so nice. But what everyone has in common is some kind of familiar, normal way of seeing themselves, others, and life. There is nothing inherently wrong with having a personality identity. It would be hard to function in daily living without one. But that personality self is generally out of touch with higher spiritual truth. It is more or less asleep to the deeper connections of life and the invisible forms of energy that strongly influence your experiences. For spiritual growth to take place, the personality self must begin to wake up and become a channel for the higher self. The familiar self can follow willingly a wiser understanding of what life is all about. However, before that can happen, you must first begin to see more and more clearly how your familiar personality self operates. There are 4 principal characteristics to watch for. 1 is habit. Do you realize how much you are a creature of habit? What you think, what you do, what you feel, what you eat. Your life is full of familiar routines. Some of the habits are good for you and for others. Many of the habits aren't. It may not be very pleasing to consider just how predictable you are, but your personality self is filled with strong tendencies and regular patterns. A second characteristic is the reactive nature of your personality self. Your familiar identity is probably much more likely to react to what is going on around you than it is to initiate new directions. Of course, your personality self has occasional experiences of real creativity, but more often than not, it is just responding to conditions in the world around you. Third, your familiar self is usually on automatic pilot. Only rarely during a day does it make free choices. Most often your personality self goes about its daily business without stopping to consider whether or not things have to be the way they are. And finally, the personality self is probably oriented toward goals in the material world, such as finishing a college degree, getting a promotion, saving money for a new car, and so forth. There is certainly nothing wrong with having goals and working toward them. In fact, there is nothing wrong with having a personality self. You need to have one to function in the world. But it is the other aspect of who you are. It is your higher self that gives a new sense of meaning and purpose to the activities of your personality self. Something special begins to happen when your familiar personality self starts acting as a channel for your higher self. Now let's focus again on this higher self that can make such a difference in the quality of our lives. Here is one good way to start understanding it. Look at its characteristics, just like we did for the personality self. We'll look at 5 qualities, each of which ends with the letters I, T, Y. And since the 5 descriptive words all rhyme, they're easy to remember. First is individuality. Your higher self gives you the feeling of being your own person. You are unique because this higher self lives within you. When you're out of touch with it, then you may often catch yourself acting as an extension of someone else, saying words that merely imitate another person, doing things that only satisfy the expectations of a friend, family member, or boss. The readings of Edgar Cayce often refer to the higher self as the individuality of the soul. That label alone stresses that the core of our uniqueness and freedom of expression lies in our higher self. A second characteristic is unity. At first, it may sound like this second feature contradicts the first one. How can individuality and unity exist at the same time? This is one of the great paradoxes of the higher self. Strange as it may seem to the logical conscious mind, it is possible for you to be fully and uniquely yourself and simultaneously to be fully at one with something greater than yourself. One Edgar Cayce reading in describing the ultimate spiritual goal of the higher self described what it would feel like to channel your higher self. Quote, "To know yourself, to be yourself, yet also one with the whole of creation." Unquote. As you tune into your higher self and let it guide your thinking and feeling, you will have this awareness of unity. You will feel oneness with other people, with nature, and with God. You will directly experience how all of life is connected, but that will create something much more than just a nice feeling. The results are something far more significant than merely an exhilarating high. Healing happens. Physical imbalances and even disease can be transformed. Emotional wounds and scars are healed. Dispiritedness and despair are changed into a real vitality and a joy for living. You are made whole in body, mind, and spirit as you channel your higher self. The definition of healing offered by the Edgar Cayce readings is identical to this second characteristic of the higher self. Healing is unity. It is the harmonious oneness of body, mind, and spirit. He might just as easily have said it this way: when you channel your higher self, then you are healed. A third characteristic is sensitivity. This is a capacity to perceive things that the familiar personality self doesn't notice. It may mean greater alertness to the physical world around you, but it also means intuitive, psychic abilities. In other words, your higher self is naturally psychic. It is sensitive to the invisible side of life, and it's always ready to help your personality self by drawing upon this kind of extrasensory perception of life. This characteristic is probably the one you most easily think of when you hear the word channeling. Whenever you or anyone else has a psychic experience, it is a form of channeling the higher self. Some people who are psychic are not ready to admit that they have a higher self, but according to Edgar Cayce's readings about how ESP works, it is the product of spiritual forces, whether we accept the idea or not. Another characteristic is creativity. Artistically creative people often say that they have the sense of being an instrument through which inspiration flows, be it musical creativity, painting, sculpture, or dance. But you do not have to be highly skilled in one of the fine arts in order to have this experience. Creativity can happen whenever you resist the impulse to do something in the old familiar routine and try a different method. In small but still very important ways, you begin to channel your higher self whenever you turn off the automatic pilot of personality, whenever you go against the grain of habit and use a fresh approach. Often you'll be surprised what your higher self can create through you once you are willing to take a chance and be open to the new. It may be something as mundane as a creative new way to deal with the troublesome person next door, or it could be a novel technique for selling a product through your job. These down-to-earth flashes of creativity are as much an experience of channeling your higher self as anything else. A fifth and final characteristic also rhymes with the others. It is activity. That is to say, your higher self is not passive and hidden, but active every day, whether you notice it or not. It is involved with every aspect of your life and frequently tries to reach you, the personality self, through hunches, intuitions, feelings, inspired ideas, and even the physical circumstances into which you find yourself led. You can count on it. Your higher self is always present and ready for you to fully channel its characteristics into daily living. Those 5 characteristics are individuality, unity, sensitivity, creativity, and activity. Now that you have a better picture of the 2 sides of yourself, the familiar personality self and the higher self, let's explore 5 ways which the Cayce readings describe for actually channeling this more authentic, wise, and loving side. You'll probably find that some of the methods are more appealing to you than are others. The goal is to discover and make use of the ones that work for you. First is to channel into conscious awareness the spiritual ideal of your higher self, to become fully conscious of the essential direction in life that your higher self seeks to follow. This approach may not sound as exciting as the others you will learn, but it may well be the most important. In fact, one Cayce reading described the most significant experience that any soul could have during a lifetime in the physical world in this way. Quote, "For the conscious personality self to recognize and to accept the spiritual purpose and ideal held by the higher self." What did Edgar Cayce mean by the word ideal? Is it the same thing as a goal? He distinguished between these 2 terms, referring to a goal as the sought-after accomplishment in the physical world, whereas an ideal can be seen as the purpose or the motivation for trying to reach that goal. For example, you might set a goal to make $10,000 a year more than you do currently. But what is the purpose behind that goal? What is the motivation or the ideal? What will you do with that additional money? Perhaps the purpose is self-indulgent, to get more luxury for yourself. Or perhaps the motivation is security, to have enough money saved so that you won't have to depend on others if you are disabled. Maybe the purpose is altruistic. You plan to use much of the extra income to help others. Your higher self has its own set of ideals and purposes for life. Sometimes the purposes and motivations that your personality self follows are the same ones, but often there is quite a difference. A first approach to channeling your higher self is to recognize its ideals. You start to do that by asking yourself questions like these. How does my higher self feel about life? What is the attitude of my higher self toward other people? What spiritual quality is most deeply a part of my higher self? Is it love, or peace, or joy, or some other characteristic? Answering these questions doesn't have to be a great mystery. In fact, the solution is immediately available to you if you will carefully search your memory. Every one of us has had momentary experiences of our higher selves. We have all caught glimpses of life through the eyes of this more authentic identity that lives within us. These special events are the peak spiritual moments of our lives, and we have all had such experiences. Take some time now to reclaim those important moments from the past. Make sure you are in a comfortable position where you won't be disturbed for at least 5 minutes, and you'll be led through a guided imagery experience to recognize more clearly the ideals of your higher self, the attitudes, the feelings, and the motivations of your higher self that you can begin to channel in daily life events. Begin by closing your eyes and letting your body relax. You may find it helpful to let all of your attention rest on the rhythm of your breathing for just a while. Notice that as you inhale, you are breathing in life, energy, and clarity of mind. As you exhale, you are breathing out any remaining tension or stress. Now imagine that lying on a table in front of you is a huge leather-bound book. Engraved on its cover is your name. You realize that this book has recorded in it the entirety of your life, everything you have done, seen, thought, and felt. It is a perfect storehouse of all your experiences in this lifetime. Imagine now that you are opening the book. You leaf through its pages. There are many words that describe inner and outer events of your life. There are also pictures, like snapshots taken through your eyes of important happenings, earliest childhood memories, grade school years, adolescence, early adult years, right up to the current time. But as you leaf through the book, you notice that just a few of these memories are recorded on golden pages. These are particularly special events in your life, special from a spiritual point of view. They are your peak spiritual experiences. They are moments when your familiar personality self was temporarily gone, and you saw life from an entirely different perspective. These experiences may have been surprising because of their unexpectedness, but each one was very positive. Look carefully at each of the golden pages you find in your book. Take time now, not just to remember what happened in each one of them, but actually relive them. Let your thoughts and feelings become what they were in those moments. You are back in touch with your higher self. For a moment, once again, you have a glimpse of life, of yourself, and of other people through the eyes of your higher self. How does your higher self feel about life? What attitude does your higher self have toward other people? What spiritual quality is most deeply a part of your higher self? Finally, try to get a sense of the ideals and purposes of your higher self. What does it want out of life? What way of living is it motivated toward? Now let your attention come back to your breathing. Just be aware of the flowing in and flowing out of your breath. Let that rhythm help you to bring your awareness back to your physical presence. Feel yourself coming back to your personality self. And when you are ready, you can open your eyes. This guided imagery exploration was a start on channeling your higher self. While it is fresh in your mind, write down the qualities of this side of yourself and whatever you are able to feel about its ideals and purposes in life. Let's look now at a second method to channel your own higher self. Perhaps the easiest and most frequent approach is through your dream life. On a regular basis, dreams serve as a pathway for the insights and the help offered by your higher self. What is it that creates a dream? What gives it a particular tone and appearance? The higher self is active in virtually every dream, acting behind the scenes like a choreographer or a stage director. Its knowledge shapes the storyline of the dream and selects the best symbolic images to convey the greatest meaning. Perhaps the only dreams for which it doesn't play such a role are infrequent but chaotic experiences produced by upsets in the body, such as a high fever or indigestion. We might even conclude that the higher self helps to shape frightening dreams, if they serve the purpose of helping us confront fears that lurk in the unconscious mind. The Edgar Cayce readings have much to offer on the subject of dreams. His inner psychic source interpreted a total of nearly 1,500 dreams for dozens of different people. In some of those dreams, he described how the higher self was directly expressive, those in which the dreamer had some kind of immediate contact with his or her more authentic spiritual identity. The same kind of dreams can happen for you. Occasionally in a dream, you may fully shed the familiar thoughts and feelings of your personality self and actually become your higher self. Such dreams, although they may happen only rarely, are sure to make a lasting impression. They are peak spiritual experiences, and usually they need no interpretation. Their meaning is the experience itself, the reminder of who you really are. More often, however, we act as channels for our higher selves in dreams as we encounter certain symbolic images which represent this deeper reality. In other words, particular symbols may tip you off to the fact that this dream is channeling higher levels from within you. The exact symbols will not be the same for all people, but they almost always have personal association with religion or spirituality. For example, a church or synagogue, a person of deep spiritual interests, a book of sacred writings. Another frequent way in which you can recognize the higher self expressing itself directly in a dream is the image of light. Since ancient times, light has been a symbol of spiritual wisdom and expanded awareness. Even the word enlightenment contains this root word and meaning. In your dreams, light may appear in a number of different ways which can alert you to this kind of channeling. It may be a bright star, or a halo, or an inexplicable light in the distance that seems to beckon to you. But what do you do with a dream which you suspect may come directly from your higher self? What if certain clues in one of your dreams suggest that you are channeling guidance? Should you follow the guidance? Can you reliably believe what this dream seems to be telling you? A way of evaluating the guidance is needed, a set of questions which you can ask yourself to determine whether or not it is a good idea to act on what you have received. Here are 5 things to consider in making your decision. First, does the interpretation you've given this dream have a ring of truth to it? At an intuitive feeling level, do you get a strong sense that this guidance is from your higher self rather than just from the wishes and desires of your personality self? Second, does this guidance call you to the very best that you know how to do in life, not just something that you can rationalize as acceptable? Third, what is the opinion of a trusted friend, someone who knows you well, and who has some knowledge about how dreams work? A second objective opinion can be very useful. Fourth, does the dream guidance stretch you to go beyond what is typical and routine for your life? In other words, your higher self is usually nudging you toward new challenges. It is expansive, and it tries to stretch you to discover that you are more than you thought. Does this dream fit that pattern? And finally, does the dream guidance suggest new things that you can do in your life? Authentic guidance from your higher self will be applicable. When your dreams serve as a channel for your higher self, they show you new approaches to living, which demonstrate qualities like greater creativity or sensitivity. Make use of these 5 questions as a method for evaluating the information, ideas, and insights that come to you. This approach for evaluation is very effective for dreams, but it works just as well for any form of channeling. Remember that not every dream will be a direct expression of your higher self, nor is every feeling, hunch, or unexpected thought. You need to have some way of consciously measuring what you get, and this is a good way to do it. So far, we've examined 2 of the 5 practical ways to channel your higher self. The first relates to ideals and purposes. The second involves special dreams. A third technique may sound too far-fetched at first, but it is something you can accomplish with practice and persistence. In a quiet and undisclosed way, you can give a psychic reading for someone else. This does not mean that you will hang out a sign announcing that you are in the profession of channeling psychic material. In fact, it is usually best that you remain silent about your source, unless you are specifically asked. Except on certain occasions, you won't reveal to the person the way that you got information about him or her. The point of such secrecy is simply to keep the focus on the helpful information you are able to channel, rather than to draw attention to yourself as someone remarkable. This is not merely a game to play with people out of curiosity. In fact, you'll probably be successful only if there is a genuine need on the part of the other person, and if you do it sincerely and with love. Edgar Cayce often told people that they could do the same kind of thing he did with his readings. They wouldn't necessarily lie on a couch and go into a sleep-like trance. Instead, they could find their own way to channel information from the higher self which would be useful to others. The same advice is still true for us today. Give this technique a try. Work on an experiment that will take 1 week. It begins by selecting someone in your life about whom you really care and would like to help. That assistance might be with a particular problem, or you might just want to help that person be happier. It may be a family member, a neighbor, or friend, perhaps a colleague at work. That person may or may not be interested in spiritual or psychic matters. It's probably best that you don't even tell the person of this experiment. Make a commitment to yourself that you will pray for this person at least once each day. In your prayers, surround the person with your caring and with light. Silently affirm the good qualities that you can see in this individual. The Cayce readings stated time and again that there is real power in prayer. Just your prayers are a form of channeling your higher self, but they may also start to sensitize you to this person in new ways. In a manner that won't draw attention to what you are doing, begin to jot down notes about this person. When you are with the person, try to be more observant than you've ever been before. What do you see about this individual? What do you hear, especially when you listen to what is also being said behind the words? Sometimes psychic perception can come to you through a more alert use of your physical senses. The intuitive impressions piggyback on top of your careful seeing and hearing. In other words, you may find that you channel your higher self and its wisdom by making the very best possible use of what is available to your conscious physical self. As you are in the process of jotting down notes over a week, don't jump to any conclusions. At first, you are just an open, alert recipient of information. Edgar Cayce frequently told people that their dreams could give them accurate information about others, particularly those whom they loved. You may get a clue or two about this person from one of your dreams, an insight about some hidden emotion, an indication of some problem within the physical body, or a glimpse of some talent within the person that is trying to emerge. At least once each day during this week, have a quiet time to tune in to this individual. In addition to your daily prayer, take 3 to 5 minutes each day to get quiet and be receptive to what your higher self can show you. It's probably a good idea to start each of these quiet times with the affirmation that you want to channel only that knowledge which you can use constructively to help this person. You don't need to know everything. Some facts may even disturb or confuse you. So keep in mind the fact that you are there not to pry or be curious, but to serve better. You want to get only those impressions that will allow you to be more understanding, encouraging, and supportive. Let's try this exercise right now. Even if you are not ready today to begin a week-long experiment, let's get a feeling for how this method for channeling your higher self can work. Think of someone in your life who could be the focal point for this approach. Before we start the exercise, look back at your notes from the first guided imagery experience. Remember that you wrote down words that describe the way you remember your higher self feeling? Review those words, because we'll use them again in just a moment. Now sit or lie comfortably so that you can really relax and yet stay alert. You might find it helpful to put your attention on the flowing in and flowing out of your breath. Let that great rhythm of your body move your awareness to a very peaceful and centered place within you. Call to your mind now some of the words that you chose earlier to describe the feelings of your higher self. As you repeat those words in your mind, let them stir to life those very feelings. Now in your imagination, see the face of the person whom you have chosen, someone you care about and would like to help more. Look into that person's eyes. Feel his or her presence. In whatever words or method seems best to you, send a prayer to that person. You need not send any thoughts about changing that person. Just accept him or accept her for the moment, and surround that individual with your love and support. Now feel yourself opening to be receptive to what your own higher self may give you today about this person. Your conscious personality self is becoming a channel to receive the knowledge and wisdom of your higher self. Feel how your higher self is in close contact with the higher self of this other person. In your conscious mind, affirm your sincere desire to be a channel for good into this person's life. And now, just be alert to whatever thoughts, impressions, feelings, or intuitions come to your mind about this individual. Holding in memory anything that has come to you, let your attention begin to come back to your normal waking awareness. Focus on your breathing to bring your attention back. And then, when you are ready, you can slowly open your eyes. What did you receive? This first time you may have gotten very little. Only through repeated efforts will things start to flow. Or maybe with this first effort you already were a channel for some important insight that can be used to help. What's the next step? What do you do with the things that come to you? Since your purpose in doing this exercise is to help the other person, ask yourself this question. Which of the impressions I've received can be acted on by me? Which feelings or insights that I've channeled can be applied in our interactions? Perhaps it involves being more supportive of a certain side of this person. Maybe it means listening more carefully when the individual talks about a particular subject. Or it could involve mentioning some difficult experience from your own past so that the person will know you would be sympathetic to anyone else with the same problem. Sometimes you never have to talk to the person about what you have received. The guidance directs you in how to act more helpfully to the individual. But other times you may be faced with the problem of whether or not to speak about your channeled information. Cayce was once asked how to deal with this dilemma. In her reading, a woman posed a question concerning the guidance she was receiving in her meditation times. The guidance concerned things that someone else was going through, and she wasn't sure if she should tell the man about it. The advice from her Cayce reading told her to be willing to share the information, but never to force the issue. In other words, find some appropriate way to speak about it, but always leave other people an easy way out if they don't want to discuss the matter or don't think you are a reliable source of direction. How can you go about doing this? Usually it won't be the best strategy to say, I channel my higher self, and here is what it is saying to me about you. No, here are two other approaches that are likely to work better. I'm not sure why, but you've been on my mind a lot lately. I keep getting a hunch or a feeling about you. I'd like to tell you about it and see if it makes any sense to you. Or you could try this one. I realize this may be my imagination, but I keep getting this impression about you. Try wordings like these or other phrases that seem to fit the situation. Some people may be open to hear you talk more directly about the higher self or inner guidance, but many will not be, and you need to make sure that your opportunity to be helpful isn't stymied by the way you communicate. Let's consider now a fourth practical method to channel your higher self. Although it seems paradoxical, you may sometimes encounter your true inner nature in the surrounding world. Your higher self occasionally presents itself to you in outer events. Your ability to recognize and interpret these events is also a form of channeling. There are two primary ways in which you may notice this. One is synchronistic or coincidental happenings. The second involves another person unconsciously acting as a channel for your own higher self to communicate with you. The word synchronicity was coined by the famous Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, but Edgar Cayce spoke of the same principle when he described outer signs that can reveal purposeful messages to us. You've probably noticed something like this in your life occasionally. You hear, see, or read something which coincidentally matches something else. Maybe there are 3 or 4 occurrences which match, all in a day or two. The connection between these events is logically inexplicable, but you have a strong feeling that they are meaningfully related, as if there is a symbolic message in them. One way of understanding this phenomenon is that your higher self uses its wisdom to guide you into these situations. The events or signs represent a form of communication. When you recognize them for what they really are, then you are channeling the knowledge and guidance of the higher self. In other cases, that same kind of help comes through the words of someone else. It is as if your higher self speaks to you through the words of a friend or family member, and even sometimes a stranger. Most likely that person isn't conscious of what he or she is doing for you. The thoughts or feelings that are verbalized seem to be random or just come out of nowhere. You may be startled by what you hear. Perhaps it's a reminder about some important fact, or a gentle admonition to get back on track with the things you ought to be doing. Start listening more carefully to what people say to you. On certain special occasions, it may be your own higher self speaking to you through another person. As you hear and understand what is being given, it's a kind of channeling by you. Up to this point, we have considered 4 approaches for channeling your higher self: recognizing its ideals and purposes, working with dreams, receiving impressions about someone you want to help, and noticing its activity in outer events and signs. The 5th and final technique is experiencing creative imagination, which is inspired by meditation. Meditation is not the same thing as prayer, although the two are related and can support each other. Although it may oversimplify matters, this is one way to define the difference. Prayer is like talking to God, and meditation is like listening. According to Edgar Cayce's readings, meditation is the most practical and direct way to contact your higher self. 2 of his definitions of meditation make this clear. One says that it is, quote, the attuning or harmonizing of body, mind, and spirit, unquote. In other words, through meditation, your physical body, thoughts, and emotions come into alignment with the spiritual side of you, the higher self. The other definition says that meditation is, quote, a practice whereby the personality self becomes quiet and the higher self comes into awareness, unquote. But to understand how it's possible to channel the higher self in meditation, we need to look at the 4 parts of a meditation session. First comes a time for preparation. The proper mood must be set. Reading inspirational material or listening to peaceful music may help. A period of sincere prayer can also be very powerful. Second is the time of silence, in which you try to focus your mind on a single thought, what is called in some Eastern religions a mantra, or what Cayce himself called an affirmation. It captures in just a few words the essence of what you spiritually strive for. Here are 2 examples, but eventually you'll want to choose words that feel right to you. Let me be a channel of peace in the world. The wisdom of God fills my mind. The amount of time spent on this second part, the time of silence, can vary from just a couple of minutes to 20 minutes or more. But start out with short periods. During these moments of quiet, focused attention, try to hold in your mind only the thought of your affirmation. Whenever distractions come up, as they do for everyone, don't be discouraged. Instead, bring your attention back gently to the affirmation. In addition to saying the words silently in your mind, it's very important to actually feel their meaning living in you. The third part of a meditation period is to pray for other people and for peace in the world. Take just a few moments to send out prayerful thoughts of healing to others and to the world. And then finally, your meditation session can end with a time for getting answers and guidance for yourself, to channel the wisdom and insight of your higher self. An especially effective way for many people to do this involves using creative imagination. The word imagination sometimes has connotations of fantasy or unreality, but just as surely, imagination can be inspired by the higher self. Creative imagery can be the vehicle through which the true inner self speaks to you, and to make this more likely, you can consciously offer an invitation. You can initiate an imaginative scene which requests the higher self to reveal its qualities. This is best done with a guided imagery experience designed to solicit inner wisdom concerning a specific problem or question. Let's conclude our exploration of channeling your higher self by trying an example of such an exercise. You may find that it is one of the most effective techniques for getting answers to challenging situations in life. Make sure you are in a comfortable position where you won't be disturbed for about 10 minutes. Close your eyes, and as we have done before, let your attention move to your breathing. With each breath you take, feel how you're becoming more and more centered and alert to inner feelings. Each time you exhale, you are letting go of any remaining tension or stress. You are becoming very relaxed. Now, imagine that you are sitting in a quiet, private place in your home. It's a spot where you find it easy to be reflective. And as you sit here, you are thinking about all the things happening in your life. Take a moment to review the happy things and the problems you face. Pick just one of the most challenging situations in your life. one for which you have a clear question about what to do next. Now, what exactly is it that you want to know about this issue? How would you phrase your question? Imagine that you pick up a pen and write down on a piece of paper the precise wording of the question you want answered. See yourself doing that now. Then you fold the paper and place it in an envelope. The envelope goes in your pocket, and you get up to go outside. As you step out of your house, the scene looks different than usual. On the horizon, you see a tremendous mountain, taller than any you've ever seen before. It's a majestic sight. In fact, the mountain is so high that its peak is hidden by the clouds. You feel drawn to the mountain. There is a strong urge within you to climb it, a sense that something is waiting there for you. You feel that an answer to the question you have written down can be discovered at the top of that mountain. And so you set out on a journey. But it doesn't take long to reach the foot of the mountain. It was even closer than you thought. Winding up the side of the mountain, you see a trail. And gathering up all of your energy, you begin what looks to be an arduous climb. But to your amazement, the hike upward is easy. You have all the energy you need, and it becomes a joyous adventure. Soon you reach the part of the mountain that is shrouded in clouds. In this dense fog, you can see only a few feet in front of you. But you have faith that this trail will lead to the top, so you continue on. Suddenly, the clouds begin to thin. You are climbing above them, and you start to see clearly again. The peak is now just above you. There is only a short distance left to climb. Built on the top of the mountain is an enormous building, beautifully constructed of white marble. As you draw near to it now, notice its features. You see no other person outside, so you go into the building through its front door. Once you're inside, you see that this must be a place of great learning and knowledge. There is a vast library with many people involved in their studies. You feel in awe of everything you see here, but also a little lost because you don't know what to do next. But then someone comes up to greet you warmly and to welcome you. It's someone you recognize, someone you think of as a person of great wisdom and compassion. Notice just who it is. You immediately have the feeling that this person knows everything about you, your good points and your faults, but you feel totally loved and accepted. You feel as though you'd like to stay in this person's presence for a long time. But then this individual asks you for the envelope you have been carrying. You hand it over, and the envelope is opened, and the paper with your question is removed. After reading your question, this person promises to find an answer for you and walks off for a while. You wait patiently, right where you are. Finally, the person returns, smiling. You know from that look that you are about to get an answer to your question. Listen very carefully now as this wise and loving person tells you just what you need to know in order to deal with this most difficult situation. Some of the things you hear will merely remind you of things you already know, but other parts will reveal understanding and insight that hadn't occurred to you. Listen now. Keeping in your memory all that you have heard, thank this person for helping you. Now turn and leave the building and head back down the mountain. You feel full of hope about how you can start dealing with this challenge in your life. See yourself finally reaching the base of the mountain and returning to your daily life. Imagine yourself successfully putting into application the answer you received on top of that mountain. Watch yourself as you try out a new attitude or a new way of acting in the difficult situation. See yourself being successful in reaching a solution. Now, let that scene begin to fade, and slowly bring your awareness back. Put your attention once again on your breathing, and this time allow it to make you more conscious of your physical presence and normal waking consciousness. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes.